Hi, my name is Jose.
And I'm Krista,
We are Connecting Remodeling.
General B contractors that do residential luxury remodeling here in Los Angeles.
Yes, and today we're going to talk about why change orders happened.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't really know what change orders are. So we're going to talk about like why they occur from the contractor side, what they are, why they occur from the contractor side, why they occur from the client side, and then some red flags that we've seen for people to watch out for. And then we'll share a little bit about like what we do in our process to help prevent change orders or to keep the information like clear and concise. So um, I would start by saying, because I feel like a lot of people don't know this and I didn't know this, is what change orders actually are. And I think the term doesn't really make sense unless you're a contractor. So before I became a contractor, I didn't know. And it means a change of scope and a change in costs. So if you have a change order, most likely it's something that wasn't in the original contract. And also it's going to change the cost. So the original price you agreed upon, that's going to change. And it happens in construction for a variety of reasons. So like I said, there's reasons it happens for the contractor, right? And then there's reasons it happens on the client for the clients. And then just in general, like a variety of things. So if we're going to talk like why change orders happen, I think we should talk about first why they happen from the contractor side. And one of the things I could think of off the top of my head that you pretty well is when there's hidden surprises behind the walls, right?
Yes, that is correct. And usually, the hidden surprises that Chris is talking about is you don't know until you open the wall, right? And once you open the wall, what you're going to discover is many possibilities: old wiring, old piping, rotten frames,
Sometimes mold.
sometimes mildew, depending where it is, but usually those things can drastically right away. It has to be brought to the attention to the owner just to make sure that we all get to be in the same page, and none of those things get to stay or not to get taken care of before.
Yeah, and I think like we should talk about like kind of some of the things like that might look like. So in terms of like hidden surprises, like you said, when you do demolition, when you make your first like initial scope of work, you can try to assume things that are gonna go they'll be back there, the things you might find. Like he's saying, old wiring, old plumbing. But there's only so much you can assume without trying to think that the whole house needs to be torn down. So we'll talk about later what we do to try to assume that. But when you come to like old pipes, what might that look like? Like actual like holes in the pipes or corroded pipes that aren't worth covering up. What does that look like to you?
Yeah, so let's look up to today's day. When you open up your wall, and let's say for the electrical, you find that your wiring is still, wrapped up with fabric, how, the old
Very
times used
old
to be.
days.
You have to get rid of that. You don't want to leave that behind your walls with a brand new remodel. When we're talking about plumbing, if you still today you have galvanized, it has to go. That's only going to bring you troubles from that point forward with your new features.
Yeah, and I would just say like one of the reasons that is always recommended from a contractor, and I think like clients can be really like, surprised, is because if we're doing say a remodel, we bring down the wall and we see behind there that the plumbing's old, but the say the bathroom or the kitchen or whatever it is we're building there is new. We're gonna want to give you like a 20-year life. We're trying to make the lifespan as long as possible on our remodel. So what's the point of leaving old pipes that could potentially have problems in what a year or two
Yeah.
if that's the case? So that's a big one. Yeah,
No, it's a huge one, and you do want to take care of these
right away for that reason.
ASAP, and your contractor should be communicating that right away because one, that's also going to impact time. She talk about the change of cost, the change of scope, but the time also will be impacted
Yeah,
at the same time.
that's true. And you're gonna have to make as a homeowner, you'll have to make a decision regarding the whatever it is, plumbing, old wiring, reframing, mildew, etc. ASAP because the walls are open at this point. Things are happening. So that change order has to be figured out right away. Another one that like is really why the contractors end up having change orders on their side is some contractors write like a really poorly defined like scope of work on their contracts, so their contracts are missing a lot of details.
Yes, and because it wasn't written, so it wasn't included. And this is on the contractor side. We are, for the most part, I can say that we are obligated, to provide a transparent, um, a clean, clear contract, so a client can actually be able to read this.
I have an example of something. So like a poorly defined scope, for example, like if we're building if we're remodeling and we're adding 2 new windows or 3 new windows, but our contract just says, and this is not our contract, but the contract received just says new windows. It's missing specifics, whether it be to a blueprint. At that point, I hope you have blueprints if you're adding new windows, but it could be to a blueprint, or it could just be in general if they say something like new windows as opposed to 3 new windows or 2 new windows. That's a poorly defined scope because all of a sudden you sign a contract that says new windows and the contractor says, oh well, I only accounted for 2, and you want this third one. And so it's super important that the scope of work in the contract is like really laid out for that reason, because that's what I would see as a poorly defined scope of work in general, is just missing a lot of details. There's also like tile work. We do a pretty good job, or we do a good job, but I think some people forget to mention the style of tile work. So there's what's the one that is a little bit more, it's on the top of my head, but
Vertical or
no, so like a standard versus oh my gosh.
oh, like herringbone.
Herringbone, yeah. So herringbone is a more detail, so it requires typically more labor. It requires definitely more skill set, so it costs more. But if someone's doing tile work and they're not defining, is standard vertical, is it standard horizontal, is it subway, or is it herringbone, that could quickly change the cost. And it again, you can have that argument with your contractor, or you can work with a contractor that like actually defines their scope properly. Yeah. I would say.
And overall, what we're trying to, share here is that you should be looking for more transparency, more clear, more detailed estimate, especially if it is the detailed estimate, because there is a difference between a preliminary estimate versus a detailed estimate. On these detailed estimates, going back and talking about the windows again, for example, like Krista said, 3 new windows versus, a set of 3 new windows, and these are wood, casement, these are, or vinyl, the color to be specified.
Yeah, and it also matters about hardware styles for different things. So like for your shower hardware, you're going to pay different price for chrome and satin nickel than you would for maybe a brass or gold or black sometimes. So those things really matter. And just like to tap on estimates, one thing that I think on a contractor side could actually cause change orders is like forgetting some of the most important things on estimates. We've read estimates from other contractors before that were missing things that I think need to be included, which are, or at least mention if they're not included, which is trash, portable toilets. Those are necessities for construction. Permits, and blueprints if it's part of this project.
Right away work, which is when you use the cities, sidewalks, streets.
Yeah, those things need to be mentioned somewhere in the estimate, because without that, you can have this nice estimate and the contractor gave you the information, but it's something for you as a homeowner to consider. Hey, is trash included? Because trash hauling in general can be quite expensive. I know right now, for example, like we're working with the city of Redondo, and they have a recycling requirement based on the scope of work. So these kind of things are important to include in the cost. Otherwise, the cost could go up tremendously if it's not even mentioned. So like that to me is an incomplete estimate. I mean, I know some contractors do it, some don't, but if it's missing, trash, portable toilet, permits, blueprints, you need to find out those costs.
Yes.
Yeah.
And another thing that will give you, and it's almost like key to understand these, when you get yourself a very low bid, almost too good to be true kind of situation. first of all, a very low estimate or right away leaves a window or a door open in this case for once again change orders to occur and very fast.
Yeah, I mean, like when just to tap back into the estimates as a whole, like one of the things that I think is also sometimes missing that you need to ask about is materials before we talk about low bids. The materials, you need to find out if the rough materials are included, if the aesthetic materials are included, if there's an allotment for materials. You need to find out what's not included. So a lot of times the contractor will either include everything, they'll include all their rough materials and give an allotment for aesthetics. And when I say aesthetics, I mean like tile, doors,
Sinks, toilets.
sinks, anything that's visual that's not hidden is pretty much aesthetics. So back to the incomplete estimates, I would bring that up. But you're right, unrealistic like low bids is definitely like a huge issue because you'll see like an estimate and it'll be super low and it sounds like all your like dreams are come true. And unless you're a contractor, because we've seen that and we've read these low bid estimates and we're like, hold on, we're missing those items, right? That we just talked about, the trash, toilet. There's no mention of permits at all. There's no mention of blueprints, even though it's like a
Yeah.
ADU.
And that is definitely more on the contractor side. And honestly, now we can understand that it's almost recognized as a tactic, from the many contractor side.
He's totally right. There are a lot of contractors, I would say shady contractors, that make this. They do it. It's a tactic to
Get their foot on the door,
yeah.
as is mentioned.
They do it. They do it to get into the door because like for example, we tend to have a higher end contract, and I'll talk about like what we do and why that occurs. Like I said later, but like they'll give this very low bid, and by the time you're halfway through the project already costs double. Yeah, like and costs 20 to 50% more, and you're not even done with the project, and you're in with this contractor. So
Yes.
we always tell people like for unrealistic like low bids to be like very weary about it, right? Like because
Yes.
I mean sometimes we're like if you trust when people come to us and they try maybe to ask us if we can match a low bid, one of the things we say is like we can't match it because we know our numbers pretty well. But be hesitant. We like tell people, be wary if you like the person, if you trust them, if they have a solid contract with you, like
Yeah.
do your thing, but still take it with a grain of salt because how many times like we see that go we hear about it all the time. People like
Yeah.
50% more.
Yeah, and also why we are adamant about mentioning, you got to make sure you like them. You got to make sure that you go through this and it looks right. Because when you start a project, regardless of the project, how small it is, it will be a minimum, of a month.
Yeah, I mean, like it really easily, especially through all the permitting process and just having inspectors come. And I think that's why, like, we can't say enough, however many times we talk about it, is like trusting your gut with your contractor is so important because, and likability is really important because you're not just, it's a collaboration, it's a partnership. You're not just hiring this person for 5 seconds, you're actually like bringing this person into your home. So, you want to make sure they're trusted and you want to make sure they're like just somebody that you can count on and that is giving you the most realistic numbers that they can. There is like there is I'll just touch on the low bid thing. It's actually like there's a law that the Contractor State License Board states that they need to anything that they can assume they need to account for in the remodel.
Correct.
So like for example,
I can share how we prevent if it's
well, I actually know an example, so I can share one. So, like, if you're in a kitchen, for example, and you're saying like kitchen remodel, and then all of a sudden you start the job, and the contractor doesn't, he's like, oh, the plumbing isn't included. It's like you should assume if you're doing the sinks, if you're doing the kitchen remodel, that that's included.
so that should be included. Yeah, especially disconnecting, perhaps nothing beyond the walls, but anything that has to be disconnected, it has to be connected back, and that's something that the contractor should already be assuming that that's part of him, and he should have mentioned.
Yeah, they shouldn't be hitting you with change orders saying like,
oh,
I didn't,
like that.
I didn't, it wasn't, I wasn't connecting the plumbing, I wasn't connecting the fridge. It's like that should be clearly written out. And the CSLB, Contractor State License Board, does have like requirements to talk about that. But that's from the contractor side. I think we could talk a little bit about like the client side. Like how change orders happen from the client side. And obviously, the first one is when clients ask for changes. That's
Yeah,
pretty straightforward, right?
which is, on the client side is also more understandable. Why? Because it's hard to see the layout, until you already have a physical building erected. That can be one of the things, layout purposes, right? The other one is change of certain products can change also the scope of work, how they will be installed.
Yeah, I mean, like, and when clients make changes, I think it's totally okay. We're used to that, actually. I mean, one of the things that I think we're pretty used to is when we start remodeling a space in someone's home, whether it be like assuming just a small space, if we remodel a kitchen, remodel a bathroom. A lot of times they'll want us, while you're here, can we add this to the work? Can we add this to the work? Because people start seeing problems with other areas that they want to address because the contractor is already there. And for us, that's great. We're there. It's easier for us to add on certain things. And sometimes it can actually give some cost savings. It's usually better for us if that occurs before we like actually close a contract, because then we can plan for it and optimize your savings. But if it happens while we're on site, that works too. And then there's
Yeah.
also like, you know, change of mind, like, oh, I want to add this,
An extra
I
window.
want to add another window, or which we've dealt with, or I want to add different. I want to change the style of the tile while we're redoing something, and it's like we can do that. It's
Yeah.
going to be it'll be a change order because we've just find our scope,
Yeah.
standard versus hair,
Which are things that we consider kind of normal part of the process, because once again, it's hard to see when there's nothing there. Once you start putting together some walls, understanding how practical it'll be for you, because at the end of the day, that is for you. We
Yeah,
build as you would like us to build for you.
yeah, and if people change their mind, I think it's totally like, I think understanding that the one thing I would say for a homeowner, if you do make changes while the construction's already happening, assume that that is going to be a change order. I think the assumption that, oh, I also have this thing outside, some rain gutters, can you also install those, or whatever, that it will cost because it does require some thought, some time,
Yeah.
materials, so labor, it does require stuff. So assume that if you ask for a change, it's going to result in a change of costs. Sometimes when it's small and minor, like, we're just like, oh, whatever, like, easy.
Yeah.
But I would assume that a change request is going to be a change in cost and a change of scope.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, very important to understand that there's a change of cost, but the change of cost can be also big different when you discover at the very early stage of the construction versus when you discover that you want to do something like that when all your walls are done, for example. If you get to,
Yeah.
like recognize that you want this to happen, when it happens like once when we have the walls open, for example, it's gonna be very different in pricing when you already are done with all these details.
Yeah, like if you've already made decisions about, let's say, tile, and then you decide, or let's say you made a decision about the whole scope of work, and you want to change something about the tile. It's not that easy to just go and change the tile right away.
Right.
So you have to take all of it off. Waterproofing could be compromised at that point. So
Correct.
it is important, and that's why the goal is that you have the full scope laid out before you actually start the job. But understand that it's okay when changes happen. It's good to make sure that that the contractor is alert to any changes you want right away. And then you guys discuss it right away, even if it means stopping the construction for
Yes.
a couple days. That way you get on the same page. Like, hey, I want to change this. But you have to speak up because it will cost more if you don't until the job is already like basically done. At that point, it's just a new job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we don't want to sound like a broken records when we repeat this, but it will impact price.
Yeah. I mean, it always does. I think most realistic homeowners should and do understand that when there is a change request, that the cost does change, the price of the job does change. They do assume that. I think it can be a little, it can be unrealistic if you assume that that's not going to occur. And if that is kind of the convert, here's the thing where I think client could potentially get themselves like in trouble, and along with contractors requesting a change, assuming there's no cost, and the contractor is like, yeah, I'll do it, and then it doesn't get done, and it's just a very so one thing I would say too to make sure as the client, just to protect yourself, is to make sure that you get the change order in writing somehow. Like
Yeah.
it just needs to be in writing, so you have it written down that that's part of the new scope.
Yeah, ideally signed for both of you,
Yeah.
contractor and client.
Yeah, we'll do like a little quick signature page for us. We'll add it to our like invoices, so then you have the full amount together, so you see there's a variety of things that can be done, but having it in writing is so important because also, are you asking the contractor? You're just asking, one of the subcontractors or one of the guys that's working there or whoever. Because if you're just asking, Joe Schmo and he says yes, and then the contractor's like, what?
Yeah.
That's super important.
Yeah, and what she's referring to is your prime contractor.
Yeah.
Because on site you're gonna be seeing different trades participating in the project. So not everyone can, call the shots. Not everyone can just say yes and make it happen. You want to be directed directly to your prime contractor, and also, in the time that we asking to for you to protect yourself with a contract where you mentioned the change order. Also, like the price is described, and also the time that we're seeing that it's going to be impacted here. Very important to
Yeah.
out of
True. I would say it's very common for a lot of change orders not to impact the time by a lot, but if the change orders involve like some heavy plumbing work or whatever, things can change. So it is important to ask and get it written down like, hey, how long is this going to add to the scope of work? Don't assume that it's not going to add time because it will.
It will.
But yeah, definitely you need to ask for that. What are some what are some red flags that would be important to mention regarding change orders?
Yeah, the one red flag that we feel and we always encourage everybody to pay attention is the low bid.
Yeah, that's probably the hugest thing. Like you should like it's very very rare that there's this like, oh my gosh, I got so lucky, this contractor didn't charge me anything and it's so cheap, and I would be very hesitant about that because either A, it's going to result in a lot of change orders, or oh, that wasn't in my contract, or trash wasn't included, or permits weren't included.
Public right away wasn't included.
So many things that might not be included.
Mm-hmm.
But also the low bid, I think what could also happen is they do the work, right? They do the work for the price they said, which is very unlikely that happens.
There are some cases.
But they don't do it right. Let's say they don't do it. So they end up like
fasting job, just like speeding up through it.
Skipping really important steps.
Mistakes will be made, but they don't have the time or the funds to correct it. They'll just stay as they are.
Yeah, and I would like to talk about two instances that I actually that we recently have seen over the past, I would say, year, and it seems very common, is bathrooms. So a contractor gave a really low bid. He did it for the price. He ended up charging this is a common thing we've heard. Ended up charging a little bit more because there were some issues, some change orders. Then 2 years later, the people can't use the shower because it's leaking.
Yeah.
Because the waterproofing wasn't done properly, because there were no permits, because it was not done right. And so yeah, they were cost you low, but inevitably you go a year, 2 years, and have to redo your whole bathroom. Is it actually cheaper?
No, it's not. And to basically avoid these, when it comes to a major remodel, when you're involved in electricity, plumbing, waterproofing, you do want these projects to be involved with the city. Why? Is because the city inspectors, there are actually either still up to today contractors related to the work they're going to go inspect, or overall they are on your side. They want to make sure that these projects will have longevity done correctly, with the codes, and they overall they come with all the requirements to have these projects to, or I mean, this work to last what is supposed to last.
Yeah, and I feel like I said, one of the red flags kind of tapers back into what I said about the city, or specifically the contractor state license board, is the requirement that a contractor, if it's something in the scope of work that is assumable, they need to include it. So if there's like they're remodeling your kitchen, they take down all the cabinets. let's assume there's going to be trash. So that cost needs to be assumed.
Hmm.
And it's our job as contractors to think through these things, to make sure that we're protecting the client. I think a lot of contractors, they like are, it's like client and contractor, they're like bumping heads. And I feel like for us, we want to, A, we like people, but B, I feel like we want to have like a collaborative working environment with our clients. We want to, be on your side to see this project come to life and really make people's like dream, like give you your dream kitchen, give you your dream bathroom, build a dream addition. Like that to me is really rewarding. And I feel like that's how we approach it differently than some contractors.
Oh yeah, absolutely. One of the ways that we provide, at least I would say minimum, surprises is by, conducting the right inspections even before the work starts, before anything get to be open. We as contractors, we understand, if the house has old wiring, if it has old piping, and if that's something you're not requesting to get done at the moment, we at least have to list it somewhere that these are things that you should be mindful that these can require changing once we open up the walls.
Yeah, and I would say that you're actually really good about like mentioning like, hey guys, I want you to consider that, once we open the walls, based on what we've seen with the pipes already, there's a possibility that this might happen. And you're really good about saying that in the very beginning. And I
Hmm.
think one of the ways that I help mitigate like change orders with us that I think we do different, and I'm actually really proud of the way we handle this, is we include a contingency of 5 to 10% based on the scope of work to our contracts. And the reason we do that is we want to give you a potential full scope cost, assuming there might be change orders, especially when we're opening walls, because it happens. And it kind of like breaks my heart to be like, extra here, extra here, extra here. So I don't want to surprise people. And once we started doing that, I feel like A, it gives you a clearer scope of what the cost is going to be, and B, I love it when it ends up our contract ends up costing less
Hmm.
because we have lower allotments, we don't utilize the contingency, um, and it makes me feel happy that we did the project cheaper than we actually contracted it for. That makes me proud when we can beat that for you guys, as opposed to adding 20%, 50% like some contractors do. Like I said, it's a collaboration. I think we approach it that way. We know it's an investment for you. We want to make sure that you're getting your investment, but also that you have a clear understanding of the potential costs.
Yeah.
So you're good. I'm good at like assuming the cost, and you're good, I feel like, at actually assuming what might happen once we open the walls.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's another one that I feel like now we started also protecting ourselves is because when you touch an area that you're doing a remodel, when the inspectors start showing up, many of those things have to be now compliance with codes, up to today codes, and that could be related to change orders as well. And that could be something either the contractor or the client expected, but contractors, we now should be assuming there will be some of these things brought up during the inspections.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big ones, honestly, like it happens a lot, especially there's a couple big ones here in Los Angeles, like an earthquake valve. They always check the smoke detectors, but that's like a almost assume that there's going to be some type of request, and we try to bring as much up as possible.
Hmm.
And I think that's why we approach it with a way that we give you your allotments, we give you super detailed estimates, we give you a contingency to count for those potential change. And, in all honesty, a lot of times that contingency does end up getting used, but not for change orders. People, they if they find out we're not doing change orders, they like to add something else on, and here. It happens all the time, anyways. But at least you've already had a clear understanding of the money you're spending, and that's our goal, is to try to avoid, like my goal at least, and I think we've talked about it so much, is to avoid change orders as often as we can and try to assume as much as possible. It takes longer though,
Yeah,
right? It
yeah,
does. It takes a lot longer for us to think about it.
yeah, absolutely. And if at the end of the day you come across a contract that you do like and you end up working with them and they still don't provide you with quite a detail estimate, I would say you yourself assume these extra, potential investment,
10%, yeah.
10% to 20, just to put it on the side. So there's no surprise to you. And if it does happen and somebody needs to reach in and allocate these funds to get the work done, it's there. because like I said, you don't want to hold up the job because this will already impact not only funds but also time.
Yeah, and I think that's what like the best way, one of the I guess a couple little like roundabout ways I can say is super important, like Jose's saying, roughly estimate 10 to 20% extra just in case, depending on who you're working with. If you're working with us, our goal is never to be that, obviously. But if you're working with somebody else, a lot for that in your budget, just in case. If nothing happens, if it's not a worst case scenario, great. But you don't want to, like Jose said, not have the funds when your walls are already open and now you have to stop, and it's usually more expensive to get another contractor, and it's better to assume that also. And like we went said earlier, like trust your gut. Make sure that this is a person that you actually want to work with, because when your gut tells you like, hey, I think these people care about my home, they care about us, they want to work together, you're most likely, I think, going to have a better, smoother process, and the change orders, regardless if they're coming from the client or the contractor, aren't going to be as shocking.
Yeah, no, and she's totally right on this. And these change orders, I personally believe that it could be a nightmare for the client as it can be for the contractor. For us contractors, honestly, sometimes it gives like a cold feeling when something like this happen. And this is actually in the past when things like that happen and funds were not there, and I had to stop my crew. When I have a crew of people on site and we were stopped because now we cannot continue because the problem that we found, I'm still paying them. You know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, somebody has to pay for that problem, and that's why I think we've gotten really good in our over the years to sort of like pay potential problems, and then make an allotment for our clients so they're not having to do all that math themselves.
Yeah.
Because like it is like a cold shower. It sucks. I don't want to be the one to be like, hey, this is a problem. This is going to be, such and such money. It happens. Things happen. But we don't want to deliver bad news. We want to be the good news people. Always. But we don't control what's behind the walls.
Yeah, ever since Krista and I, we've been, allocating these contingencies, alerting the client in advance, keep these funds on the side. When we start the project, the least what we don't want to do is slow down the project. We want to go as fast as we can, stay on schedule, and the goal is to maintain that schedule because even though we know things can change, we at least have where and how we're gonna make these keep going because in advance somebody thought out of having these funds to be there to just when decision needs to happen, they happen.
So I'll just do a quick little recap. Change orders obviously means change of scope and change of cost. That's what I would assume.
Time.
There's reasons change orders happen on the contractor side, like things are hidden behind the walls, problems that you didn't know about. Not everyone's a mind reader for the walls. Also, some contractors use it as a shady tactic. I would say don't work with them if you get that feeling from the beginning. And also, there's just the scope is not defined as well. On the client side, clients make change requests, they want to change something, or add something else to the job. And those are all things that are kind of common and do happen. Some are good, some are bad. But either way, I think I'll taper off by saying a lot mentally for 10-20% over the full scope of your job, unless you're working with us, because we have a contingency. A lot for that as a just in case in your mind, and you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Typically, most of the time. What would you end with?
And once again, protect yourself. Get a reading contract. Make sure that it's listed what is included, but also very important, what is not included.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. See you next time.
Yeah. Uh-oh.